There is finally a glimmer of hope emanating from war-torn Sudan. The two warring military generals who are at the heart of this conflict have agreed to a 3-day ceasefire. This comes after 10 days of incessant violence between the two factions that has resulted in the killing of over 400 people and left more than 3,700 others wounded. The conflict has also triggered a mass exodus of foreign nationals from the African country while forcing thousands to flee capital Khartoum, home to over 5 million people. The ceasefire also comes after the UN chief had warned that Sudan, one of the poorest nations in the world, was on the edge of the abyss, and that the entire region could get engulfed in this conflict. The fighting between General Burhan, the chief of the Sudanese Armed Forces, and General Dagalo, the chief of a paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, had unleashed unprecedented battles in the Sudanese capital and elsewhere. The people have been trapped in their homes, surviving with fast depleting supplies of food, water, medicines and other essentials amid power and internet blackouts. Those Sudanese who can afford to do so are fleeing Khartoum on crowded buses, traveling across the more than 900-kilometer desert to Egypt. Multiple countries such as the United States, the UK, France, China, Saudi Arabia and others have launched emergency missions to evacuate their citizens by road, air and sea. With the Khartoum airport non-functional, many foreigners are being airlifted from smaller airstrips. Let's now shift our focus to India's evacuation mission called Operation Kaveri. On the instructions of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Union Minister of State for External Affairs V. Muralidharan is rushing to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia to lead Operation Kaveri. Indian naval ship INS Sumedha reached Port Sudan on Monday, and while more than 500 Indian nationals reached the port the same day, the first batch of 278 Indians have now left Port Sudan for Jeddah, where two Indian Air Force C-130J planes are deployed, waiting to bring the rescued Indians back home. Over 3,000 Indians are stuck currently in Sudan. Among them is a settled Indian community of around 1,200 people that has been in Sudan for nearly 150 years. These include many Gujaratis as well as members of the Haki-Piki tribal community from Karnataka. Some say the usual travel time from Khartoum to Port Sudan is 11 to 12 hours. But on Sunday, it took more than 25 hours for many Indians to reach the port city due to the ongoing fighting. India is conducting the evacuation program from the Port of Sudan, and many of the Indians have to spend a minimum of 12 to 20 hours traveling to the Port of Sudan, while their life is at stake every minute. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka has asked India to help evacuate its citizens from Sudan. All right, what does the road look like now for Indians stuck there, and how is Operation Kaveri unfolding? To understand that, let's now go across to our guests. We're joined by Suhasini Haidar, National and Diplomatic Editor at The Hindu, and Lieutenant General Shaukeen Chauhan, Strategic Affairs Expert. Thanks so much to both of you for joining us. Suhasini, welcome to the show. Let me begin with you. Now, after 10 days of incessant fighting, finally there is a 3-day ceasefire in place. Is this likely to significantly ease and facilitate India's evacuation mission? Close to 300 Indians have already left Sudan, are on their way to Jeddah. But remember, here we are talking about over 3,000 Indians who are stuck in that country.
Absolutely, Neha, and I think time is of the essence here because there was a kind of fragile ceasefire announced for 72 hours between the two factions that you mentioned, the military and the paramilitary, if you like, RSF and the Sudan forces. That was to facilitate this evacuation of civilians that need to get out. Obviously, whatever the outcome of the power tussle within Sudan is not going to end easily. So it is necessary that all countries, particularly India, that has 3,000 people stuck in that conflict, are able to bring out their civilians within the next 2 to 3 days. So what we're seeing is coordinated efforts. As you pointed out, there are planes on standby. There's the ship INS Sumedha, which is basically going to be like a ferry service. We saw some of this being done in Yemen as well. where between Djibouti and Sana'a, we saw the ferry service being used by the naval warships. We saw it, I think, in Lebanon as well in 2006, where from Larnaca in Cyprus to Lebanon, you had them ferry as many people out to safety as possible, go back in, bring out more people. And then once they're in Jeddah, or once they're in Port Said, or once they're in a safe area in another country, then they can be flown back. I think most of the focus, the coordination is going to be done from Jeddah. That's where the Minister of State for External Affairs, Muralidharan, is also overseeing some of these operations. And I think what we're going to see in the next few days is this evacuation. One of the things I wanted to point out, which has been of concern before, we saw it in South Sudan a couple of years ago, is not everybody reaches the point of evacuation in time. And sometimes it is not possible to complete the evacuation as a result of that. And I think the government, the diplomats that are based in Khartoum, everyone's trying very hard to make sure that no Indian civilian is actually waiting it out in the middle of the war, thinking that things are going to get better, and not coming to the Port of Sudan. Remember, as you pointed out, they have to take this 25-hour journey from Khartoum to the Port of Sudan. So to make sure that they all come to the Port of Sudan, where there's relatively less fighting, and get taken out in the next couple of days.
Well, that certainly is the hope. We've begun in right earnest. How is this likely to pan out over the next 2 to 3 days? We have a very crucial 72-hour window that we are talking about here. Lieutenant General Shaukeen, Chauhan, come in here, sir. There is no doubt that India has been very proactive in launching this evacuation mission called Operation Kaveri. The Prime Minister has chaired a meeting, is being regularly updated and briefed on the situation. A union minister has flown down to Jeddah to oversee the rescue mission there. But as I said, it is over 3,000 Indian nationals that we are talking about. We have a brief window right now. Even in the past 10 days, there was talk of ceasefires that were constantly breached, ceasefires that did not hold. How hopeful are you that this ceasefire is going to hold and that this window will be enough for India to bring back all its citizens safely out of Sudan?
Good evening. Thank you for calling me on your show. Indeed, it's a matter of great pride when we see Indian warships and Indian Air Force airplanes going across to Africa, as well as Jeddah, to help get our citizens back. As you said, there are about 2,000, maybe 2,500 Indians there. Right now, INS Sumedha has left with about 258 Indians, and she's going to do an 18-hour ferry service up and down. So I expect that Sumedha, which has already left an hour back, should be back by tomorrow 10:30, and be ready to leave again by tomorrow noon. So we still have a 24-hour period after that. I expect, and this has happened in the past since I've served in Africa, is that I expect that the two warring factions, the RPF as well as the Sudanese armed forces, will respect the ceasefire. They have been fighting though, but they will respect the ceasefire and allow the foreigners to leave. Along with the many Indians, the Sri Lankans have also requested the Indians to help take out their citizens. I'm not sure how many Sri Lankans there are in Sudan, but whatever the number be, I'm sure India will help them out. The US, Turkey, and a number of other countries have also moved their people out. Now, what is important to note is that this conveys a very strong message across the world that India is not only capable, India is prepared to move her warships, to move her Air Force assets anywhere in the world to get back Indian citizens. And I think that's a very, very positive sign that we're giving to the world that, look, we are a powerful country and we are prepared to do anything to protect our citizens. So that, in short, is what I feel is going to happen, that Sumedha will probably make 2 to 3 and maybe 4 visits across to the Port of Sudan. And in these 4 visits, we'll be able to get back everybody that we can possibly take out.
As Suhasini said, it's going to act as a ferry service. And you're, of course, right in pointing out that, the message that India's evacuation operation sends out is that every Indian life matters. There is decisive leadership and decision-making on display. We've lost no time in launching this operation and are doing everything in our power to bring every Indian stranded in Sudan back home safely.